first meeting is going to be the entrepreneur coming into the venture capital firm and giving their idea, telling a little bit about the company, telling about what their team is, their idea, why they should be funded by the venture capital firm.
So I didn't bring my checkbook, but anybody who wants to take a check from me on the terms that I outlined before, I'll run home and get it. So who's in? Okay. Seriously, that is not the way we do business. Brad Sperluga, founder and managing partner at High Peaks Venture Partners. I've been in the venture business since the summer of '99 when I was in my 20s and foolish. And for about the first 9 months of my life in venture, it seemed like the most ridiculously easy and fun thing in the world. And I was pretty sure that I would at least have the option to be retired by now. Yet here I am. I think very passionately that there has been no more exciting time in my life in the venture industry than right now. I think, what we've seen in the first 15 years of the internet was batting practice to a game that we're now at best in the first inning of. And the way that ubiquitous mobility, ubiquitous bandwidth, the first generation of purpose-built devices for consuming and interacting with the web, it's an enormous range of opportunity.
I'm David from Smart Money Entrepreneurs. I got my political science major from Rutgers University in Jersey. I have a very strong foundation in community development. I met Jeremy in class, and we did a project together, business plan, and that's where we sort of kicked it off. B corporations are the newest wave of companies for good.
Camera's rolling now.
Hey, you know what my mom gave me for lunch today? What? Cookie. Thanks for the cookie, Mom!
This is Kilo 3 to the whole fucking planet. Do you read? How can nobody pick up this damn signal?
Got a distressed plane here. Engine's not responding. He is going to need assistance. Can you isolate his location from there?
There is no way. That's a restricted airspace. Who authorized this flight?
Not cool. You know what is cool? Getting us some beer.
Sorry, I'm all out.
Again, we will not be rescuing the pilot. Furthermore, we cannot interfere with this plane crash. I repeat, cannot. November Oscar Tango, not interfere with this plane crash.
But what I like to tell people, and a lot of the startups and companies that we work with, is that crowdfunding is not easy money. Neither necessarily is it going to be significantly cheaper. We hope it will be. But being prepared to tap that. I mean, if you want to, for example, if people have been speaking with VCs, you're not going to walk in there completely unprepared saying, hey guys, I kind of want $1 million. What do you guys think about my idea? I mean, you're going to think through it, you're going to put together a meaningful presentation and a story around your investment.
Dave Arman here at PRSA. We're at the Critical Mention Lounge, and I'm with Trace Cohen from LaunchIt. Tell me about your new venture, Trace.
Hey Dave, glad to be here. So LaunchIt is a self-publishing platform for PR agencies, brands, and their clients to launch and socialize everything new. Essentially what we're trying to create is the largest virtual database of all new products, services, and ideas to make sure they can be found, discovered, and shared.
Wow, that's a tall project. So
Is it a big vision as a startup?
Is it your first PRSA?
This is my first PRSA, yes.
All right, well, go wild, and I hope you find some great partners and customers. Good luck.
I will, thank you.
So let's see, as Chris said, I started my first company as a teenager. I was running an advertising agency, and I created a company called SenseNet, which was in my living room in the Upper West Side. And we had 400 phone lines going into my living room. So if you wanted a phone line in the Upper West Side, you were screwed, because I bribed all the Verizon guys for all the phone lines. But at that time, I stole one guy from the ad agency which I was running, a guy named Art. And he was with me from that very beginning. When I'd come home at night, I'd find him sleeping on the floor of my living room, like face in the computer. We were all sharing the same ramen, the same rice and noodles. It was that same founding story. And I was young, and I had really good intentions, I think. I want to start to change the world, so I figured if I built something huge and kept all the company to myself, I would have all the resources to do cool things with. So I remember somewhere along the way, maybe this was a year and a half in, we were building Sprint's first website, Procter & Gamble's first website. We were like the first people out on the internet. This was even before Razorfish. I was sitting at a place called Tortilla Flats, and sort of Art looked across the table and he's like, all right, so what do I actually own in this company? Like, where's my stake?
And it's interesting because in the ways that you kind of use crowdfunding today, it's a lot more rewards based. So you're basically giving a product in return for capital. And as the person that's giving that capital to that startup, a lot of times you might, or there's stories, I should say, there are stories out there of basically people donating money to these causes and not giving their product. So there is kind of this trust issue with the crowdfunding space in general. And what makes our platform kind of unique is that we're actually trying to build an analytics real-time tracking platform. So as you donate money to or I guess I should say invest money into a company, you can actually see what your money is doing. So you can see how that investment is being spent, where it's being spent, how it's being spent, how that money is actually benefiting the company, and then hopefully over time you can build that trust with that startup that you've invested in.
My first entrepreneurial venture was a vineyard and winery called Sugarleaf Vineyards that I founded when I was 19 years old. Founded it and created it in the Monticello area of Virginia. I spent 8 years marketing, branding, and creating a super successful business. At the beginning of 2011, I decided to start Luxury Market Branding and pretty much came up with a list of the things that I loved most about running and creating the winery, which was the marketing, the branding, the business development, and creating strategic partnerships, boosting revenue, building an amazing team, and I decided to bring those skills to other businesses as services within my marketing company. So how did I first end up in the wine business? I think the short answer and the best answer is really that it was a passion project. It was a project out of my heart, something that I was really passionate about, that I loved, that I spent a lot of time researching and understanding. And it was something that I was really eager to make sure that I could do. And once I was able to see that I could do that and accomplish that, I was kind of ready to move on to something else after 8 years. So for me, I was really able to hone in on what my strengths were based on my interest and what my passions were based on knowing myself. So for me, when I went to go create Luxury Market Branding at the very beginning of 2011, I made a list of the things that I loved most about being responsible and my duties and my responsibilities really at my first company. And those were the marketing, the branding, the business development, creating strategic partnerships, really combined with my formal education in marketing and international trade. So I have a Bachelor's of Science in International Trade and Marketing. And I've always loved that field. I've always loved understanding what motivates people to make a purchase, what motivates them to patronize your business, what motivates them to be interested in your product or your company or yourself. And it was a big deal to really hone in on that with the winery, because you have to understand what makes people come back and what makes them connect with your business in the first place. And so I went back and actually made a list of the things that I loved most about my first company. And then I made a big list of the things that I really could stand to do without. Which was a lot of the administrative stuff and a lot of the legal stuff and the accounting stuff. So that's pretty much how I kind of arrived at my decision of what my company was going to be and what the services were that I was going to offer to other people. And a good amount of my expertise was purely a result of trial and error and being a business person in the everyday world, in the field, seeing the fruits of my labor be super successful and bring people tons of happiness and joy, and a lot of it was also what I had learned in school and what I'd also learned from amazing mentors that have helped me and guided me along the way. I think I get this question a lot, and I was actually recently really honored to have the opportunity to judge the NIFTY, the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship Business Plan competition in New York City. And I was asked this question by a lot of young, aspiring entrepreneurs with amazing talents, maybe in need of direction, maybe in need of motivation. And I think that understanding what your core competencies are and being able to not be afraid to ask other people who are, experts or, more experienced in an area where is not your strength is probably the best thing that I can ever advise an entrepreneur to do. Oftentimes I find that entrepreneurs want to be able to do it all, and we all want to do it all, entrepreneur or not. But I think it's really important that you can honestly be real with yourself and say, you know what, I'm good at this and I'm not good at that. And find someone who's good at that and let them compliment you. Bring them onto your team and build up, because even if you were good at everything, you're going to burn out. So you need a partner, you need a team. So I would really advise people to be true to themselves and know what they're good at, hone in on those qualities. And I always say work your core competencies and crush it. It's something I always tell everyone. So I think that's my best piece of advice. I think the most difficult thing that I encountered with starting my first business is that I was becoming a trailblazer for many reasons, some of which involved race and some of which didn't. By itself, I was the youngest self-made winery owner in the country. On top of that, it was the first Black-owned winery ever on the East Coast and one of less than 10 in the country. In an area where there weren't many African Americans even to start with. There's not a lot of diversity even in that area of Virginia and that area of the country. So I think that a lot of my, a lot of the hurdles, I'll call them, was having to really prove myself. And I've always been a pretty self-assured person about the things that I felt confident about. And I felt very confident about creating my business and coming into the market. And I was not necessarily prepared for having to really have to go the extra mile to A, prove myself because of my age, and B, earn the respect of my colleagues just because we looked a little different. So, it's something that I know people get very frustrated about. Minorities in this day and age get very frustrated about having to prove yourself. I think everyone has to prove themselves, regardless of what your color is. But that was probably the hardest thing for me, was that I was working really hard to build an amazing business, but I was also working equally, if not harder, to prove my worthiness in the industry. And as a result, I gained the respect of my colleagues and of everyone in my industry, and it paid off tenfold. But it was another job on the plate for sure. No, you know what? I don't think I have any regrets. I really don't. I think everything that I've done, everything that I've learned, I'm really grateful to have experienced, and it shaped me as either a professional or an individual. So I appreciate all of my experiences for that reason. I think at luxury market branding, I think the biggest struggle is helping other entrepreneurs with amazing brands that have amazing potential think outside of the box. I think that's hard for entrepreneurs anyway. But now that I'm bringing my services to companies as, my own business, but yet I have the lens of an entrepreneur, I'm sitting there saying to them, almost as a friend sometimes, you can't necessarily build your business just for yourself. You have to really build your business for your market. And I think that it takes time for business owners who have spent a lot of time kind of raising their businesses and nurturing them and hand-holding them to understand and to let go a little bit, to really put their product on the market. And we deal with consumer goods, so to put their product on the market for the market and not necessarily for themselves. So I think the hardest thing is telling other people that all will be okay, telling my clients everything will be okay, but we've got to really reach your customer. And that doesn't always mean speaking in the language that so-and-so says you should. I mean, for me at luxury market branding, I think it's extremely important that companies build an identity and that they build a consistent message. I'm big on consistency and I'm big on detail. And I think it's really important that businesses create, trust within a community, because in this market, you're competing with so much. You're competing with discounts. You're competing with companies that maybe want to, earn brand loyalty versus brand awareness versus just sales. And being true to whatever your company's mission is and making sure that your messages across all platforms and all media channels stay true to that message is something that I really drive home at Luxury Market Branding. I want customers to know that they can always rely on the companies that I help to market and help to build. And that in turn that creates trust, and in turn that creates word of mouth marketing and gives that company more equity in the marketplace. I think that for me, when I advise any company on what their marketing budget should be for what they want to accomplish, it really honestly depends on that company's goals. I hear amazing ideas every day, and it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to propose what I think should be the plan. I'll propose a plan based on what you tell me you're willing and capable of doing. So it really depends on the company. It depends on if it's a consumer goods, are you trying to create sales, or are you trying to build awareness? Are we talking about a community and a product that we want to build awareness for, and in turn revenue will eventually come? Or are we talking about getting a product in the hands of consumers and getting people to know it and understand it and touch it and feel it? So it really depends on A, the type of product, and B, the goals of the company. So I can't really probably answer that question in a really straightforward way. I can only say that it depends on the goals, and it depends on what your benchmarks are and where you want to be. And if where you want to be in a year is at X revenue, there's a figure, and that figure is probably, you know, somewhere between 10 to 25% of what you want your revenue to be to establish your brand in the market. So in terms of setting goals, I do this every day with my clients, and I believe in setting goals, I believe in having benchmarks, I believe in having targets 1,000%, with or without professional help, with or without a marketing company behind you, because you have to have a way, you have to have some sort of barometer for your success. You've got to have a way that your staff is accountable, your team is accountable, and that you can measure if you're where you want to be when you say you want to be there. So I think every company should establish goals, and those should be done with the help of your advisors or your marketing plan or your business plan or whatever companies are using and have at their disposal to be able to use to set the framework for how they want their company to be. My best piece of advice that I give, and I live by it myself, is always ask questions. Never, ever, ever stand around someone that you know has knowledge that you want access to and don't ask a question. Ask, and they will respect you for asking, and they will respect you even more for listening and appreciating their answer.
While going to school, I actually did my did my undergrad at Hunter. So I did my undergrad and then my MBA, both part-time while working full-time. I used to work in a law firm. And I was managing the marketing and investor relations department for that firm. And so I really, Yahoo, Google, they're all coming in. That seemed really interesting to me. And I wanted to switch into digital. And I knew the step to do that would be a step back, right? I'm not going to go in and go manage a digital team, because I just, you need, especially when you're stepping into a new industry, and the MBA helps you do that a lot. It helps you kind of switch gears. But you know what? I took a position with a lot less responsibility, but I didn't see it as a position with a lot less responsibility. I saw it as I'm going there for the training. So I'm going to go there to learn how to do this new field. And even when they give me my job, which, again, like I said, the scope was a lot less than what I was used to, I was just doing more. So I think with that entry-level job, like, don't just take, okay, well, here's what your role is, and you go do that and you go home. What else can you do? And all of those things are going to stretch you to learn more, extra projects to develop those connections that you were saying, and give you extra opportunities to do other things within the company.
Crowdcube is an online platform that allows people to raise money for their businesses from absolutely anybody. We've been going for just about 2 years now, and during that time we've raised 3.7 million for 21 different companies. Taking that leap from being in a full-time paid job to actually running your own business is a big leap, especially when you've got commitments. But at some point you have to back your own idea and take that leap and back yourself, and you have that belief in your business to do that. And I just thought at that point in time, if I don't do this now, then I'm never going to do it. And I'd hate to see this idea take off and somebody else do it. So at that point, I just knew that I had to take that leap. And looking back, I'm just so glad that I did it. And I've had lots of other ideas for businesses, which for various reasons I never actually got them off the ground. But the big reason I never did get them off the ground was I didn't have money to fund them. And I saw lots of other people who had ideas for businesses in the same situation and also struggled to find finance. And I thought there must be another way of doing this. There must be a way to raise money in a different way. And I thought, you know, if we can get a concept together to allow people to do that, it's going to be popular. I did a huge amount of research and analysis, a lot of thinking initially, a lot of sharing the idea with other people and getting feedback. And then once I knew that it was viable, I started to do some proper research. From our point of view, there's a lot of legal aspects to it, and so I got legal, some legal guys involved quite early on. So it was about 2 years actually in the formation. Whilst I was working full time in my previous job, I've actually pulling together the idea a bit further. Yeah, it's not difficult to find the right people to share your ideas with. I mean, I shared it immediately with my family and friends, and some kind of people who I knew, colleagues of mine at work who I trusted. But then the key thing for me was to really find some experts in the area who were kind of acting like a mentor in some degree and had some further understanding of the sector than I did, because my background is not in financial services at all. So I was planning the idea for about 2 years before we actually launched, getting everything together, and then it's actually taken us 2 years from launch to get to where we are now.
The number one thing you need to do is understand what kind of business you're in. If it's a high growth business, you do have a possibility of raising money, but money is expensive.
How do you know if it's high growth?
Because you have to ask yourself, is this something that with the infusion of cash can double every year for the next 5 years? That's a high growth business, and that would be of interest to investors.
I would say so.
But it's cheaper if you can build it out of your own resources and your own network. It costs you nothing. So I'll put it this way. If you're an entrepreneur, you've got to ask yourself, if I took money and gave up equity versus somebody sponsored me and I give up no equity, what's a better deal? Now, your friends and your contacts are a form of sponsorship.
Right.
So whatever you get out of them, you really don't have to give up much equity. So that's cheap money. And you want to stick with that as much as you possibly can. And to take investor money, you have to be high growth. You should ideally be either of two classes. You should be under 30, in which case you're willing to work for nothing, give up your love life, and walk instead of taking subways, and you'll be investable, especially at these valuations today. Or you're a 30 to 45-year-old manager who has at least 10 years of domain expertise, and you really understand a segment of the industry, and if you can prove that there's a market there, then investors will be very happy to write you a check, because that's actually a very good bet. If you know.
So where do you find these investors, and where do they hang out?
Well, they don't hang out in bars. they hang out.
Why not?
Because they can afford yachts.
Oh.
So you look for wealthy people. You look for investor groups. You come to the iBreakfast.
Right.
And so I'll give you a tip. How do you know a real investor from some guy who just shows up looking
not sure.
wealthy? Okay. Here's the trick.
It's like the millionaire next door. You don't know.
No,
You're going to tell me the secret
I'm
now.
going to tell you the secret. So here's the secret. Generally speaking, they're going to be a little older, which means they have a little bit of a middle-age spread.
Okay.
Okay. Not you're going to see it over here, but you know. So, so the trick is this: if they're wearing what looks like pretty decent average clothes, but you can see their shape,
okay,
then they're wealthy, because it means they paid a tailor to fix a jacket. And ordinary people don't bother to do that. And that's how you know they have money. And the next thing to do is to make sure that what you're doing is something that they're interested in. Because if you do what they're interested in, especially if it's something that helped them get rich when they were younger, you'll have their ear. And as long as you're young enough to make them feel that they can relive that experience, there's a good chance that on a personal level they'd be interested in if not investing in you, in taking your pitch. If an investor takes your pitch and they like you, even if they can't invest in you, it's in their interest to share that information with their colleagues, because that buys them points. So the trick is to have a story that they can retell their friends and say, hey, I got a great one for you. You'll like this guy. And if that ever happens to you, check's in the mail.